Hello. Hi. Please take your seats. It's time. Good morning, distinguished guests. On behalf of IE University, it's a real pleasure to welcome you to our IE Tower, to this high-level event entitled Climate Transition and Competitiveness, Ambition, Advantages, and Trade-offs. Thank you all for joining us to this important discussion that will bring together leaders from government, academia, European institutions, finance, trade. So altogether, we can explore the key challenges, but also the opportunities of Europe's future. To officially inaugurate this event, please join me with a big round of applause to our welcoming speakers, who will say the welcome remarks. Please, first join me welcoming Gonzalo Garland, Executive Vice President of IE Foundation.
Well, good morning to all. It's a real pleasure to be able to, on behalf of IE University and IE Foundation, welcome all of you here today to this very important event on a we can't think about many other issues that would be as relevant as this one. No? So let me start also by thanking, we're waiting for the third Vice President and Minister for the Ecological Transition and the Demographic Challenge, Ms. Sara Agese, who should be arriving anytime now. And thank her very much for her presence here in this discussion with Enrico Letta, who's our dean. You all know, probably many of you know him, former Prime Minister of Italy, and our dean of our School of Politics, Economics, and Global Affairs, and who also started recently, and you will hear more about this in just a moment, the IE Competitiveness Hub in Brussels, which is, as you can see in here, one of the reasons of that conversation between Enrico Letta and the Vice President. I also want to thank you, all of you, for being here, of course. I know that some of you, it's the first time you're here in the tower. We're very happy that you're here and that you get to know the tower more. And I also want to thank the other speakers that will be participating in the discussion. Frank Elderson, member of the Executive Board of the European Central Bank. Cristina Lobillo, Director of Energy Security and International Relations of DG Ener European Commission. And Lara de Mesa, Head of Sustainability of Grupo Santander and Co-Chair United Nations Environment Program Finance Initiative. So thank you very much for being here. And of course, also, I do want to mention all the work that Alinea does with Ana Sanchez. She will be explaining more about that. But also all the team with Isabela del Alcázar as Chief Purpose and Sustainability Officer at IE. And of course, Borja Santos, who will be telling you more about the initiatives that we're carrying out here at IE University. And all the team, because, I mean, of course, behind these things, there's a lot of people that are working in many ways. Very little more. I just want to emphasize the fact that at IE Foundation, or IE University in general, but IE Foundation, we view ourselves as a very key element that we think is not just the good, it's indispensable in terms of putting a university as a place for discussion of relevant issues and putting together different actors of society. And we view ourselves as that's one of our missions. Our mission is, of course, teaching is part of our mission, of course, doing research, but in a way being a bridge between academia and civil society overall. So in that sense, I think this is a very important event reflecting that priority of IE. So as I was saying, on the one hand, Alinea, our think tank on climate action, is precisely designed to connect rigorous analysis and multi-stakeholder dialogue with industrial policy and investment decisions in Spain and Europe. As you will hear more, Alinea, we aim to bridge precisely the business sector, the public administrations, trade unions, NGOs, financial institutions to advance climate ambition by identifying bottlenecks that are impeding climate action in different critical sectors, and hopefully to follow up with real action. We always say that the final objective for us is to foster positive change in society, and therefore it's not just pure discussion, it's how do we implement that in society to really generate that positive effect. As it will be explained also, the IE Competitiveness Hub in Brussels, it was inaugurated just a few months ago. Again, it's in line with this policy. It serves to inform policy action through applied research as Europe navigates a defining decade. We all know about the challenges that the world is going through, but also Europe is going through. And for Europe to grow, innovate, and lead, we need that evidence move beyond, as I was saying before, analysis and into action. There's no need to emphasize how the world is going through these profound transformations. Europe's industrial model is under pressure from multiple directions: geopolitical tensions, technological disruption, climate imperatives, supply chain vulnerabilities, and intensified global competition. So these forces are not temporary. They are structural, and they require structural responses and long-term commitment. That is why I find the content of today's dialogue particularly relevant. So very little else. We just want to emphasize, again, that's what we're very happy to have you all here as representatives of, again, not only the private sector, academia, the public sector, NGOs, international multilateral organizations. That's where we need to get together and really move from there to policy and action that will affect society in a positive way. Without any more, thank you very much for being here. I'm sure it's going to be a very interesting event. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'll give the word to the Associate Dean of IE School of Politics, Economics, and Global Affairs, Borja Sanz.
Thank you very much. Is my role somehow as an Associate Dean of one of the schools that is working a lot on energy transition to frame a little bit the conversation on what IE does in energy transition before we go in depth into the topic. You know, the institution is really much involved into foster energy transition, and we do it in 3 different dimensions. One is on teaching and training. We have, for instance, a Master in Public Policy with a specialization in energy transition, where we are training students who identify, design, implement, and evaluate policies in this line. We have a Master in Law with a specialization in law regulation as well, in energy regulation, sorry, that foster as well the better laws that allows for the energy transition. We have a Bachelor in Environmental Sustainability, and we have a Bachelor in Political Science with a specialization in energy and sustainability. So we are really engaged into train professionals with the skills, knowledge, and attitudes towards energy transition. The second thing that we love to do is create an ecosystem where we have student experiences that foster energy transition. So Alinea and the Sustainability Office and the School of Politics, Economics, and Global Affairs, we organize a challenge this year where a group of students had to identify the opportunities and challenges that 3 Latin American countries were having to foster energy transition, in particular Mexico, Brazil, and Chile. So they were working together on proposals, on identifying risk challenges, and they were presenting those outputs, those research outputs, to diplomats and the embassies of those countries here in Spain. Those one who won had the opportunity to visit factories of companies that are leaders in decarbonizing the industry and their companies. And the results were actually very positive, because somehow we have new leaders that we hope will be part of companies and governments that are going to keep leading the energy transition. And finally, it's not only education, not only student experience, of course, is applied research. And the collaboration between Alinea and the Brussels Competitiveness Hub, based in Brussels in particular, is key in this dimension. energy transition for us is very important for two different dimensions. One, of course, for competitiveness, that might be the focus today, but we shouldn't forget that is key for environmental reasons. I know it's not very trendy, unfortunately, but energy transition is fundamental to decarbonize our economies, because energy contributes for 3/4 of the carbon emissions that are affecting our weather. So global warming effect, unfortunately, that in the beginning of June, we are dying of hot, and I see some people moving the abanico. So we experience it on our own, but there is people who die because of these extreme weathers, and of course, there is a clear disruption in the economy. It's very important for public health, as you know, because the burning oil, coal, or gas contributes to air pollution. That is one of the major factors of respiratory and cardiovascular diseases. And finally, energy transition is very important to foster sustainable development. In many low and middle income countries, having an energy transition foster a reduction of poverty, healthcare, or a better education. And today we will talk a lot about the influence on competitiveness. At the European Union, we cannot afford that the industrial electricity prices are still more than twice higher than the US, or 50% higher than in China and India. So energy is a major input of our industry, transport, etc., and therefore is key to have a more competitive Europe. That is the focus on the Competitiveness Hub in Brussels and Alinea. Second, is really important for our security, the European security. I mean, we have the clear example of what happened with the conflict in Ukraine, and that exposed our dependence on gas from Russia. So it's really key for our security and autonomy to foster renewable energies where we can produce our own electricity and our own energy. And finally, very important for the competitiveness, because energy transition fosters innovation and new technologies in battery storage, in hydrogen, and in other new technologies that are key for Europe to compete globally. So for these two reasons, IE is fully engaged in this conversation, and we are very lucky to have all of our guests and authorities, and we are looking forward to enjoy the debate. Thank you very much.
We've heard that climate transition requires not only the strategic vision, but also the ability to create partnerships, mobilize knowledge, and to transform ideas into real impact. So with this spirit, I will introduce Ana Belén Sánchez, Director of Alinea, who will give us an overview of the organization and some examples of how these ideas can be transformed into climate action.
Thank you very much. And I don't know if I have... Yeah, I just would like to introduce very briefly what is Alinea and the work that we have been doing, because we have had already a conversation with the different stakeholders that are part of our activity just before this activity started, but some of you are not part of it, so I wanted you to explain who we are. That's what defines us. We are a think tank. We want to focus on climate and on action. We would like to see ourselves as a systemic change enabler. We are neutral convener, so we invite always different stakeholders from private, public sector, trade unions, civil society organizations, academia, and environmental NGOs. And we also would like to see ourselves as a strategic partner to try to meet those solutions that we are identifying. Those are the different areas that we are working: sustainable cities, green industrialization, food systems, and everything related to land use and water, international dialogue and partnership, which is more needed than ever before, and ecosystems in transition, where we also would like to talk about just transition and some other things. That's how we work. We identify what is needed in order to increase climate ambition. Then we create a multi-stakeholder dialogue of all these different stakeholders that many of you are present in this room now. We work together to identify what are the bottlenecks and the specific challenges that that particular sector, that particular conversation is having to try to get the climate ambition that we have identified. And what is more important is that we identify what should happen, the solution. With that, we produce knowledge and we try to make the change that it's difficult, let's put it like that. But this is also part of our conversation. This is what we have done so far, very quickly. 13 working groups on these different areas of work. We have a dialogue with more than 300 professionals from 160 different organizations. And we have all these 8 ideas for action. It's exactly the results of our working groups. And in addition to that, we are doing some other type of reports where we would like to put in the table some knowledge about different conversations as well, like water, like food system approach, and some other things. And we are already working in different networks with EU and Europe level climate action tanks. And very recently we have been informed that we will be part of an energy transition think tank network at the international level. We are happy about that. That's what we are doing this year, and many of the participants that are here today are part of those working groups. We have one on energy storage to promote decarbonization and electrification, flexibility and energy storage. We also have here the decarbonization of chemical industries, plastics, oil, fertilizers, and pharma. We work on batteries and critical materials to strengthen the electric vehicle value chain, because we have been talking about that for a couple of years, and that was an element that was needed to talk. Keep working on the agri-food sector this year with a very specific focus on climate finance. And finally, we're about to start, because we'll do it after the summer break, a dialogue with Chile about the development of a shared value chain on lithium, very much linked to the value chain of electric vehicles. And now, just a couple of minutes to see Alinea in action.
Climate change knows no borders. To deliver a truly global green transition, we need more than ambitious targets. We need systemic coordination and alignment across all key stakeholders. Alinea creates an open space for dialogue that brings together all key players to identify the barriers slowing down progress and co-create realistic, actionable solutions. How do we accelerate a climate transition that is both competitive and fair? By combining knowledge, ambition for progress, and the power to act. That is why, in Alinea, we develop reports and roadmaps shaped by multi-stakeholder dialogue, helping drive better climate decisions. We foster constructive conversations among all stakeholders. We put forward practical recommendations and help turn them into action. Just 3 years after its creation, in Alinea's impact can be seen in the strength and commitment of its community. More than 300 professionals from across sectors come together to listen, learn, reflect, and combine their expertise to reduce systemic risk and open new pathways for climate transformation.
La aportación de Alinea yo creo que es clave a la hora de generar una dinámica en la que puedes ser escuchado.
Vemos una diversidad de agentes que creo que enriquece mucho el debate.
Participación de diferentes grupos y sectores que muchas veces no nos sentamos a debatir en común.
Por otra parte, la identificación de barreras.
Esto va a aportar mucho al sector a la hora de conseguir sus objetivos. Y con un plan de acción para solucionar los retos que hemos identificado.
Because being a catalyst means exactly that. Turning barriers into real solutions, strengthening value chains, connecting stakeholders, building alliances, and uncovering opportunities where others only see complexity. Alinea, catalyzing transformative ideas for climate action.
So thank you very much. You saw already some of our working groups in action. I just, I was to say that I will present the next panel, but you will do it. Let me only thank the I Foundation that we are part of, the I University, of course. Without the university and its very clear understanding about the importance of climate action among the academia environment, it could be impossible to have this project, and European Climate Foundation for the old support. Without you, that will be absolutely impossible. And thank you very much, everybody, for coming.
Thank you, Anna. So now we move on to one of our central moments of our dialogue, entitled Climate Transition, Driving Europe into Equity and Security. And for this, I will introduce our moderator, Victoria Dendrinou, Athens Bureau Chief of Bloomberg News.
Yes? Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Victoria. I'm a journalist for Bloomberg News. I am based in Athens right now, but I think the reason I'm doing this is because I was in Brussels for more than a decade, and I covered everything from the European Green Deal when it started coming about to the Capital Markets Union when it was called that and it was first proposed. So very excited about our two discussions today, and I want to invite our first two speakers. Sarah Agassiz, the third vice president, and Minister for Ecological Transition and Demographic Challenge, and Ms. Enrico Letta, the Dean of School of Politics, Economics and Global Affairs at IE here, the chair of the IE Competitiveness Hub in Brussels, and of course, former Prime Minister. And the author of the letter report, which I'm sure you've all read very extensively. Obviously, this discussion is always interesting, but it's especially interesting right now with what's happening in the world. I mean, Europe's climate transition is unfolding at a time that looks completely different from when the Green Deal was originally conceived and agreed. There's the return of great power competition. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has changed the discussion on energy security. Washington and Beijing have adopted a completely different industrial strategy, and that's made Europe reassess the relationship between decarbonization and economic security and strategic autonomy. So the central question I think Europe faces right now is very different to when this debate started, which is not whether to transition, but how to transition in a way that strengthens its competitiveness rather than undermines it, how to transition while strengthening its place in the world and its social cohesion. So Mr. Letta, maybe I'll start with you and you can help us set the scene. Europe has committed to very ambitious climate targets, but it faces mounting pressure on competitiveness and energy costs. How would you assess where Europe is today in balancing its climate ambition, but also, strengthening its economic resilience?
First of all, thank you to all. I think the audience is a fantastic challenge for all of us to try to say something relevant, but I would like to thank Sarah for her presence here, but before thanking her for the presence, I would like to thank you for your leadership on these topics, because Spain today is a reference at European level, and for us it's great to be here, for me to be here in Madrid at IE, trying to, with you, starting with your experience and your vision of what is happening, to try to say something interesting, but first of all, try to say also something useful from our side. We are an academic institution, Alinea here, and we heard Anna saying very interesting things, and Alinea is doing fantastic things in a university that, thanks to Isabella, is leading as flagship sustainability as the main value of the university. So for us here is the possibility also to discuss on not only the diagnosis and where we are, as Victoria asked, and I add to this the possibility to consider that what is happening today is an incredible challenge and also opportunity for all of us, for a very simple reason. In the panel later on during the morning, we'll have the opportunity to listen Frank Elderson. Frank is the big boss of ECB on sustainability. And ECB on sustainability means that if the ECB is successful on sustainability, we will be successful on sustainability. So I think what you will say with your experience on that will, I think, lead our discussion. My key point, Victoria, is the following one. When we launched some years ago the Green Deal was, I would say, a great project with a fantastic sense of the future, of duty, mission, solidarity for new generations. In the last months, we had another word that was linked to sustainability and to fight against climate change, to energy, and the word is security. That was not present at the beginning of this entire journey. And for me, and I would like to try in this today's conversation to add some reflection and maybe to have some steps further on this part of the reflection, because it is clear that today, I think if we are here, we are all believers, if I may say. But we are not the majority of the population in Europe. And we know very well that today in Europe, the idea on keeping fighting for these objectives is under pressure. It is under pressure from some years, some months. It is under pressure because it is complicated, because there are many links with social, economic, jobs. At the same time, because culturally it's not easy, and also because something happened around Europe, in the US, for instance. And what happened in the US is influencing very much our discussion within Europe. So why I say security as the main word in my contribution here? Because through security, we can expand the constituency. Through security, we can expand the group of fan of sustainability. Through security, we can be successful. We can be politically, economically successful. And that is today the big risk, is to lose the battle on the political side and on the economic side. To win the battle on the cultural side, it is clear that the future is a future where sustainability has to win. But if we lose the political battle and if you lose the economic battle, it will be very complicated to have only the cultural one winning. So my answer in a nutshell is the fact that today's security is changing everything. Why? For a very simple reason. Energy independence is one of the fundamental points of security today. Without energy independence, without energy autonomy, it's impossible to be in a security mood. I was impressed. Yesterday I was with Fatih Birol, the general director of the energy agency in Paris, and he was delivering some data. It was, for me, impressive how much we are dependent as Europeans. Of course, there's a big difference. Countries less dependent. Spain is one of them. This is why I think our conversation today and your contribution, also because of the successes, can be so interesting. Spain, Sweden, Denmark, France, the Netherlands. But when we go to, for instance, the big industrial countries in Europe, we see a level of dependency that is creating the big conundrum today. And we will discuss it, but I would like just to mention this point because in our conversation is fundamental to create alliances. And this alliance with the security issue today is absolutely fundamental. And of course, we learned it the day in which Russia invaded Ukraine. We learned it second time 2 months ago when we discovered the existence of Hormuz. That was interesting. There are some trends in today's world in which suddenly we discover places that what we never mentioned before. Today, everyone knowing everything about Hormuz, that was a little bit less known before. And maybe tomorrow there will be another topic showing that the lack of independence is maybe the most crucial and existential threat for our future. And for Europe, you, the ministers, so the Council, the European Council, the Commission, you have the possibility to, to relaunch the Green Deal through the capacity to expand this alliance. And this is why I think, Frank, your contribution today is so important too, because it is clear that this alliance needs the word of finance. And the word of finance at the beginning of the Green Deal was very, very, I would say, pushy and very part of that. Then, in the last 2 years, some, I would say, cautiousness or maybe some ambiguities, but it is clear now we need to change everything, and we need to relaunch also because of that. And we are in a conversation where our word here and the academic contribution can be very important. So we are here to learn, and to learn also from your experience what we can do to help, what we can do to help you, what we can do to help the institutional world to move, and which are the best ways to convince people, to convince decision makers, to convince stakeholders, and to be fast, because it is clear that there's no time, and the decisions, they have to be taken as fast as possible.
You touched on pretty much everything that we're going to discuss today, but I want to...
Sorry.
No, that's good. You're preparing people. I want to go into the Spanish example and the Spanish experience in a bit, but before we go there, I wanted, Vice President, to ask you for your broader insights in what Mr. Leta said just now. I mean, based on the geopolitical context and on this security issue that's happening right now everywhere in the world, but that's so felt in Europe, do you think Europe should rethink its ecological transition, and how should it rethink it? In what terms?
Well, first, good morning. Good morning to all of you. Good morning, Professor Leta. It's really a pleasure to have the chance to have these discussions. And thank you, of course, to IA in university and Alinea, Ana Belén. It's there at the back for this inspiring discussion. I think it's very timely. That's the first point I want to say. We are facing a complex, you are saying something very important. Things are changing very fast. So we have many things happening at the same time. I think polarization, it's one issue that we need to tackle inside the European Union, of course, outside as well. But inside, the fragmentation it's something really tricky. But it's also about talking about energy, climate, reindustrialization. It's about employment. It's about sustainability, our generation and next generation. So if I may answer to your questions, I think there are two pieces that for me are very important. The first one is climate change, climate emergency. It's advancing, it's taking speed, and the impacts are really relevant in Europe. You can see that Europe is the warmest, fastest continent above every other continent. That means that the speed in the European Union is twice as fast as the global average. The second point that I think we share many things, and of course we are believers, but we share that Italy, Greece and Spain have something very special. It's the Mediterranean Sea. And the Mediterranean Sea is also warming fastest than expected, 20% fastest than the rest of oceans and seas. So this is one key piece. The second piece, which I think is very important, is, as Enrico was mentioning, we are suffering the second energy crisis in less than 5 years. Second. And let me remind one thing. The first one is still ongoing, because it seems that Ukraine is not there anymore. It's still there. So we have two crises. I think they are wars, and they are fossil wars that put us in a very tricky situation. European Union, we as a whole, as you were mentioning for me, thinking about how can Europe ask and work for energy independent, energy autonomy is a key piece of the answer we need to think about. And I think this is very much linked with something that happened, I think 40 years ago. We have something very relevant. We have a report coming from a UN organization. It's the Brundtland report. And at that time, there was a clear message. If we want to have sustainable development, we need to align economic, social, and environmental dimensions. The answer is clear. It's there, was there 40 years ago, and in this complex situation, it's even more relevant than ever. So we need to work together to make it happen. And what is the Spanish experience and how we can speed up and how we can work? I think the Spanish experience is that when we plan our climate and energy goals for 2030 and 2040 and 2050, this is very important. We look at today, but we also think about what we want to see in the coming 20 years, because what we do now have a clearer impact in 10 years from now. So we need to think about the immediate actions, but also actions that we need in the future. And our planning was based in the European Union and the Green Deal, of course. We were very ambitious, but we have something that is very much linked with this conversation, with what Ana Belén was saying, Alinea. We need to have all stakeholders on board, a full participation of all actors, NGOs, trade unions, enterprises. So part of the success story in Spain is because we have this kind of open discussions, open participation, and then we fix those objectives with the real picture of what can happen with our industrial ecosystem, what can happen with our enterprises, and what are the benefits for our citizens. So we produce this plan, but we also have a specific impact assessment report. So when we share this plan, we share what are the benefits for your cousin, your mother, your father, a small enterprise. So we want to see what is the impact on the health, so reduction of pollution and less deaths because of this pollution in the main cities. We also have the impacts on the economy. We also have the impacts on employment and how this agenda is good for prosperity and well-being. So my answer to your question is we need to be confident that the green transition is an agenda of prosperity, is an agenda of well-being. We need to show all the good cases that we have, and we want to share the Spanish example because our example is really good. It's good in terms of once you have affordable prices in the energy sector, you will have a reindustrialization happening in your country. You will have more employment. You will have more investment coming from outside world. So my probably main message, which I totally agree with Enrico, it's security have to be a central piece when we think about the strategy. But we need to be clear that this security have positive impacts in the citizens. And we need to make those impacts happen now and explain them in a way that everybody can understand that this transition is happening and this transition is good for all of us. So we have concrete examples in Spain, in just transition, concrete examples in Spain, in the energy system, concrete examples in Spain, in the industrial sector coming. Just 5 years ago, lots of projects won't happen in Spain, and now they are coming. Why they are coming to Spain? Because of affordable energy. Why now we are better prepared for the second crisis that we are suffering? Because we have a plan and we have a full ecosystem of companies and a civil society that is fully aware of the importance of this agenda. So mainly this is part of the answer, but I think we need to work together, all together in the European Union to make this happen.
So it's also what I wanted to ask you. I mean, in a lot of member states, less so in Spain and the EU, there's a lot of pushback from people who feel, from households who feel their energy prices are higher, their food cost is higher. What would be your advice or your message to the governments in these places to get the public on board in the transition?
Well, it's clear that dependency, addiction to fossils is a vulnerability. It's clear, it's there. And in Europe, you were mentioning about the report that was produced yesterday by the International Energy Agency. In Europe, we have 60% of dependency in our energy mix, Europe as a whole. 97% if we think about oil and oil products. 85% if we think about natural gas. So it's clear, the answer is we need to look at what we have in Europe. And in Europe, we have resources, we have companies, we have talented people, we have technology in renewable sources. Wind and solar, they are there. And we have the potential. In Spain, we increased 150% from 2018 to 2025. We increased our electricity production by 57% now in the last year that we have data in 2025. And the result is that we have less dependency from third countries, so we are less vulnerable to this crisis, and the prices are lower. So the benefits are there in the bills of all the households, in the bills of all enterprises. So my answer to those households, families, small and medium enterprises is we have real data coming from this transition. And it's true that the main thing is that we don't have fossil fuels in Europe. We don't have them. We have other sources. Let's invest in those ones now. And probably prices, obviously, we have different prices with China, with US, but we need to make clear policies now to finally achieve, in the medium and long run, this affordability for all of us, for all the Europeans.
I wanted to briefly ask you both about security, which you've mentioned already, but a bit more specifically. Mr. Leta, maybe I'll start with you. I mean, the energy crisis, it's accelerated Europe's push for renewables. But do you think it's reduced Europe's strategic vulnerabilities, or has it just changed one dependence with another one?
No, I think it is today the big challenge we have, because this big challenge will change, I think, forever the way in which Europe works. Because we had for 80 years this vulnerability and these dependencies on energy, on security, today on tech, and all these dependencies, at the end of the day, they are linked to one point. And the one point is European fragmentation. If we are fragmented, we are vulnerable and dependent. It's so easy. It's so easy. I give you one figure that is, I would say, taken from the financial world. That is, for me, I would say, the image of the cost of fragmentation. When we discuss about Europe and the US, talking about real economy, we play in the same championship. We are 18% of world GDP, they are 25%. Remember these two numbers, 18, 25, is the same championship. We are 450 million, they are 300 million. In terms of people, same championship. But our 18% of real GDP, when we go discussing about finance, and I take market cap as criteria, our 18% becomes 12% of the world. Their 25% becomes 60%. And 60 and 12 is not the same championship. It's so evident. 60, 12 is Champions League and, I would say, hyper-emotion, Segunda División, not Liga, Segunda División, 60 and 12. So fragmentation is that. And fragmentation was that on security. Fragmentation is that on tech. On tech, I insist on this point. Artificial intelligence leadership from the US is not because they are more competent, more intelligent, they are the best professors. No, they have big money. And they have a risk aversion environment with big money. And we don't have this big money. I live between Spain, France, Italy, and I can tell you that when I see each national environment asking for a national plan for AI, And you see that each country, Lithuania, Greece, Portugal, Germany, launching 500 million, 2 billion plans. And then you look at the magnitude of the investments that are coming from the US, 1 trillion. It's even complicated to see where 1 billion is in comparison with 1 trillion. But this is the difference, and they are leading because we are fragmented, because on these topics we are not one, but we are 27. And the big conundrum for me in all this discussion is exactly about the link, as you mentioned before, very correctly, between, I would say, the big mission and competitiveness. And I think Alinea mission is also to try to work on that. And this is why I'm very happy of this cooperation this morning, because this event is co-organized with the Brussels IE Competitiveness Hub. That is a new center of applied research that the university decided to have in Brussels based on competitiveness, and this is one of the best examples of where competitiveness and sustainability are in the same. Why I say that? For a very simple reason. If we want to be sustainable in Europe, we have to go for renewables. That is so clear. Who is the champion of technologies today for renewables in the world? China. At the same time, if we want to be competitive at European level, we are discussing about an Industrial Accelerator Act. Which is the possible target of this Industrial Accelerator Act? China. And here we have the conundrum. Because if we close Europe to China products completely, the immediate consequence will be negative consequence of our capacity to go renewable. That is so evident. There's an immediate link. At the same time, we don't want to be a colony, a technological colony or a manufacturing colony of China. We have to be independent on that, but we have to create a transition to help our manufacturing industry to keep leadership. So you immediately look at this point as the main conundrum. We have to create the right equilibrium between a transition to protect our own industry, but at the same time, if we close today to Chinese renewables technologies, we will kill our sustainability. So we have to try to combine the two. Is politically very complicated, but the only possible way is to have a European discussion altogether. And I say that because it is so easy, I would say, on these topics to work with slogans. We are at the center of big conundrum, where it's complicated, it's difficult, and we have to combine solutions. At the same time, we need to have strategies. And for me, this is the reason why there's also a need of creativity. And this is why a university like IE, taking the leadership on that with our different branch, can give a contribution. And this is why I think the leadership of countries like Spain, with the results that you had until now, and the possibility in Brussels, in Europe, to find the right solutions, tools, toolbox to overcome everything. And at the same time, this fundamental, I would say, cultural and also a little bit media fight to try to say, hey, it's also our own responsibility. It's not because we have just 6% of the world population that we have to say is a problem of the others, the ones who have, I would say, 20 or 30% of the world population. It's our responsibility because that we know very well that the others are running. I come back to China as example. If you go to China, you know very well that they are not copying us. Maybe it's the problem, the opposite problem. We have to understand how to copy them on some topics. For instance, the high-speed train. It's so evident that the high-speed train is the new mobility in Europe. But we know very well that you know, I wanted to give the leaders, when I presented my report, I started the presentation of my report because I knew that the 27 leaders were in a room, they were at the 8th point of the agenda, they were tired, it was necessary to punch in the mouth. And then I started saying that, you know, I wanted to travel and have a journey in Europe to meet all the different constituencies, countries, people, to present a report on the single market. So I tried to have this journey by high-speed train, because in my country, high-speed train works very well, in Spain the same, in France, in Germany, so it was natural to have it by high-speed train. Then, after my first work to organize the travel, I immediately understood that in Europe, it's impossible to have a journey through the European capitals by high-speed train. You have to fly, even where it is so close. The capitals of the Visegrad countries, the capitals of the Central and Eastern European countries, the relationship between France and Spain, between France and Germany, between Italy and France. We are obliged to fly, even if the distance is minor in comparison with what happens in the Chinese cities. Every Chinese city is connected by high-speed train. So I just say that because we have, even on China, the idea that they come here to copy us. I think the main problem is that maybe we have to understand what they are doing, even on sustainability, and being a little bit more ambitious. I say that because these conundrums are, in my view, the most complicated issues today, but they are so fascinating too.
We're running out of time. I very briefly had, I guess I had one more question for the Vice President, if that's okay. We talk about...
Yes, one?
Well, I have many, but in the time that we have, I ask you both for a very short kind of closing remark, but I wanted to ask you a little bit about critical minerals. And obviously Europe has this, you know, major green technology ambitions, but they depend on lithium, they depend on sourcing all these minerals that are largely outside of the EU. So how should Europe approach securing these? What do you think would be best, and how important is it for its strategic autonomy?
Well, I think we put in place some steps in the last 3 years, which are important, not at speed and scale that we need. But I would like to make a reference with what Enrico was mentioning. We're talking about the need of investment, a huge amount of investment to meet the challenge. The challenge is this size, so we need investment at this size, not this one, of course. But think about from the starting of the conflict of Middle East up to now, if we take the figures by European Commission about the cost of these fossil energy imports in Europe, it's around 69 billion. 69 billion in the last 3 months. Imagine a world where we don't have that dependency. We can use that money for transformations. We can use that money for a strategic autonomy, also in critical minerals, the questions you were mentioning. So if we want to accelerate the energy transition, and we are at that, and we want to also accelerate the digital transformation, we will need these critical minerals, critical raw materials. So we advance with the Critical Minerals Act. We advance with choosing some strategic project among the whole European Union. In Spain, we have more than 7 specific ones. But once again, in Spain, we have also a good experience to share. We, even before we have this regulation under the European Union, we put in place a roadmap to see how we can increase this mining and also circular economy in terms of having these, you were mentioning lithium, cobalt, tungsten, or whatever. I mean, there are more than 20 critical minerals. What is the situation nowadays? The situation is that one country, the same one Enrico was mentioning, have the 70% of the refining of those minerals for the whole planet, China. 70%. This is a vulnerability. Come on. We need to wake up and see that if we want to progress, we need to see how Europe can invest in mining, invest in circular economy, invest now. So that's what we are doing. We are first looking at what are the minerals, the critical minerals that we have in Spain, and we have plenty of them, so we are the lucky ones. At the same time, we need to make things happen at a speed. That means that mining, it's also something difficult in different countries, also in my country. So we need to think how we can progress with sustainability, with the environment, but at a better speed. And obviously, I was mentioning circular economy. It's a pillar because in the past 10 years, Europe is exporting electric equipments to developing countries. And they are the ones taking all the critical minerals and they bring those minerals back to Europe. It's crazy. It's totally crazy. But that's what we are doing now. So Spain is investing also in this value chain, trying to make recycling, circular economy, new mining, sustainable management mining in my country. And I think Europe is doing a lot of work on that, but not at the speed that is needed. So if I can say an advice, it's not an advice, but probably it's an experience, is as Enrico was mentioning, I think we need to be clear in like 5 elements. The first one, we need to have a roadmap, a clear roadmap, not backsliding, go in front, a vision for now, 2030, 2040, 2050. And be clear, because that delivers certainty for investors, certainty also for the citizens. So we need to be clear about the post-2030 framework. We are starting that discussions in the coming weeks, and it's very important to be very clear. The second point is we need to learn from the experience. And in Europe, we have lots of good experience. And one that I want to mention today, because it's very important, is the ETS system. The ETS system is working, is delivering. The price signal, it's very important. And we need to be very clear about, we need to support the ETS system now and in the future. And it's working. Come on, something is working. Why we want to damage something that is working in the European Union? And the third thing is we need to be innovative. Out of the box. This sentence that is very much used, but it's very important to implement. So we need to be innovative on how Europe can make things happen in a better speed and scale. And I think there are good experiences like a hydrogen bank. It's delivering. Good projects are happening in Europe. And also the strategic project on critical minerals. Another pillar is finance, of course. Finance. We need a clear budget at the European level that fit for the purpose. It's not yet there, and we need to do it now. So probably it's time for big discussions, as Enrico was mentioning, at all heads of state all together, trying to fix, if we really want to go in this transition, let's do it now with clear figures and numbers. And another thing, but for me it's very important, is unity. The single market, we need that. The better thing that we have in the European Union is if we act together. We need to act together. And in the past months, in the past 1.5 years, 2 years, things are happening. This fragmentation that you were mentioning, it's really a big problem. If we really want results, we need to go together. Because we have other countries, other continents that are there, and they are faster and with bigger investments than European Union. So let's do it. We can make it, but let's go together, all of us together. And last piece, and not least, it's the social dimension. If we really want to make this happen, we need to take care about the citizens. We need to explain why this is important for all of us. What are the benefits in terms of energy bills, in terms of health, in terms of jobs, in terms of new industrial revolution in the country. So we need to explain that to all of us. And once you have the civil society on board, things can happen at a different speed. And for that reason, I think it's important that Europe work in a just transition way, and we have a full experience on just transition that we can share with a governance structure, with a work with all stakeholders, with the private sector, but also with the territories. So this is something that we always need to take care about the people, and that's it.
Well, that feels like a perfect note to end this discussion on. Thank you. Thank you so much, Vice President, for being here with us. We can move on to the second panel and release you back into your work. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You stay. We continue. I would like to invite our speakers for the second panel, Mr. Frank Elderson from the European Central Bank, and Ms. Lara de Mesa from Santander. Here you go. Ah, you can sit either way. I don't think we have that. Yes, for sure. Sorry, we're readjusting the waters. All right, so this second discussion is obviously in the same broader theme, but given our two speakers that we have with us today, I wanted to focus a bit more on the macroeconomic stability aspect of it, but also on finance, which came up quite a lot in the first discussion. So maybe, let I start with you as our other speakers warm up, but you know, Europe's had two energy crises in the last 5 years, basically, less than 5 years. Has it learned any lessons, or is it still, is energy dependence still a vulnerability? I mean, I would like you to answer this from the point of view of how much of a risk is this to the European economy?
I think we have to, on this point, we have to see the plus in the discussion. What happened in 22 changed completely the way in which we are discussing about these topics. It is clear that the push for today a more concrete roadmap, steps, and so on is on the table. I would like to mention, just to be also a little bit positive in our discussion, what the leaders decided, and the three institutions together decided April 24 in Nicosia. Today we are under the Cypriot semester presidency in Nicosia European Council. The three institutions, so Council, Commission, Parliament, agreed on a plan. The name of the plan is One Europe, One Market, 42 measures. Part of these measures are the core of this circular single market and circular economy big push. Part of these measures are the Savings and Investments Union. And I'm sure that you will have a lot of things to do and to say on that. And the Savings and Investments Union is the only way to transform the discussion about how to finance all these needs. Because it is clear that if we look only to public money, it will be very complicated. The idea that is at the base of the Savings and Investments Union is exactly the idea to try to transform the big amount of savings that we have in Europe that are sleeping savings, because we use them use these savings for real estate, because we make them sleeping because we send them in the US. That is the other incredible thing. The need today to use savings, Europe is the biggest amount of savings in the world, to transform them in investments. So this is the main point on the Savings and Investments Union. And this plan, I say just that, 42 measures. The most important part is the method, deadlines. Each of these measures has a deadline. Q3 26, Q2 27, Q4 27. That means that countries, member states, European institutions, they have to deliver because they committed themselves in delivering. And I think the role of the ECB, this is why it's so important to have Frank here, was fundamental because since the beginning, Christine Lagarde and the ECB clearly said that these missions can be fulfilled and we can be successful only if we keep fighting in continuity. If we work like that at the European level in the institutions on these topics on stop and go, it's a disaster. We have to give, first of all, to the financial world and then to all the different stakeholders the sense of the speed, of the journey, of the path, knowing that that is not incompatible with adjustments. There are many topics where it is necessary to adjust. It is necessary because they decided when they launched some of this project to say we have 2 years of test, then we will adjust, and it will be necessary to do so. So adjustments are not incompatible with the paid and the roadmap and the clear dimension of this roadmap. So what is happening today for me is going in the right direction. I think the geopolitical mess around us played a role, a positive role. I'm so sorry to say that, but it convinced the European leaders to go in the same direction. Now we have to keep the direction and the speed. That is absolutely fundamental. And the role of the financial sector will be, I think, very crucial. This is what we inaugurated the Brussels IE Competitiveness Hub 1 month ago in Brussels with an event where the Commissioner on Finance was there, the President of the Parliament was there, many stakeholders. Then we were together in Athens with the President of the Eurogroup, Pierre Akakis. And what we are doing at the Brussels Competitiveness Hub is exactly trying to help a university like IE to be on these topics avant-garde. And I take the opportunity to say that the coordinator of the hub, Tullio Ambrosone, is here. So I would like to thank him and all the team of the hub. Our school, Spega, you heard Borja Santos before, the associate dean. We are very much committed, and for me, having this panel today, this event today is fantastic because we are trying really to be protagonists in this debate.
We talk a lot about the financial sector, so it'd be good to hear from them too. Mr. Mesa, coming from a major European bank's perspective, where is capital going when it comes to these transition projects, or where is it flowing? Where is it, and what's the problem? Is it that there is regulatory uncertainty? And what are the investment? Are there projects to invest in? What are the main barriers from your point of view?
Thanks a lot. Thank you. First, thank you, IE, for having us, for making this taking place. As a Madrilean resident, it's great to see what IE is happening in Madrid. And as sustainability practitioner, it is great to see IE also supporting training on sustainability as you are doing, not just in Spain, but also even at the other side of the Atlantic. So great to be here. And of course, to Ali and Ea, Ana Belén and the team, for what they have told us today, which seems quite natural and quite coherent with what our previous speakers have been sharing. They need, to bring together all stakeholders. But it's something that it was not so obvious until recently, and that it's still, needs to happen at a larger extent. No? So to your question, I want to start on the positives before moving into the banking sector. And first, let's acknowledge that, we are doing things good. no? I mean, we are on a better trajectory in terms of transition than when Paris was signed, which is really great to see. Investment on clean energies has already reached the trillions and is double the investment in fossil fuels since 2024. So for every $1 that goes to fossil fuels, $2 goes to clean energies. Electric vehicles share globally has quadrupled, has multiplied by 4 in just the last 25 years globally, okay? Not just in Europe and not just through regulation, but through market trends, no? So all those are positives. And moving into financial institutions and where flows are going, 2025, in terms of volumes for sustainable business, was a record year for all financial institutions across the globe. Still then, where is the challenge, no, that we are sharing also today? That increase in volumes are not yet as material as we need them to be. We still need those trillions to multiply it so that really investment on sustainable solutions becomes mainstream, okay? And we need to be mindful here. It's great to be believers in the room. It's great to, reinforce each other. But the truth is that businesses invest when projects make economic sense, and people, consumers, adopt solutions when they are affordable and practical. And we still have a way to go for this to happen. No? When we talk to clients, what do they tell us? Where are the bottlenecks that Ana Belén was referring before? No? We see bottlenecks in sense of the economic sense of certain investment. And it's great to be a believer, and you may even invest if the economic sense is not there. But as Diletta was sharing with us, it won't happen for the total population. And we need everyone, because the climate challenge requires that we change everything we do. That is the dimension of the challenge we are facing. So we need everyone to do. And for that to happen, economics needs to work. We need to convince the non-believers, the people that are not today with us, okay? And for that to happen, the numbers need to talk. Uncertainty has also been mentioned around further future policy frameworks. It's also very important. When you are addressing medium, long-term investments, you need to have certain certainty on how that is going to behave. Technology deployment at a scale. We have the technologies on many occasions, but it is still not happening. No, I listened to our vice president, no, and some of the hope and frustrations saying solar and wind are there, no? Why do we don't deploy them? Well, the truth is, and going to fragmentation, is that permitting and administrative complexity remains being too high. Too high. And this is not an excuse. We see the timing of the deployment of any project to be 7 years in some cases. So you don't need to be a believer. You need to be a Quixote and much more than that. So we really need to make things easier for people making those decisions, no? Grid deployment and infrastructure constraints are also very relevant. 75% of the mobility solutions in Spain, park not on private places, but on public spaces. Unless there is some certain infrastructure, you cannot expect people to make that decision. They won't change the decision unless it is practical to them. And of course, electrification challenges. So, those are bottlenecks. The positive thing, again, let's focus on those, is that we know them, okay? But now it's time to fix them. So we really need to address those.
Mr. Elderson, from the ECB point of view, obviously you're a supervisor, a regulator, you talk to the financial institutions, but you also talk to the governments quite a lot. What's, in your view, what the key issues holding capital back? Is it this regulatory uncertainty that we talked about? And what do you advise governments or the financial institutions that you deal with to get over these issues?
Very well. Well, first, I really want to thank the organizers to organize what I think is a fantastic event. I've been very inspired already so far, so I'll try to contribute a little bit also on my part. Maybe the first thing I want to say, it's wonderful that we are a room of believers, you mentioned this, but I think we are way beyond that. We are a room full of people that are in the know, that know the data, that understand what that actually means. So the time of believing is past. This is a time of hardcore. Maybe first, because the ECB has been mentioned quite a lot already, to say what we are not. So the ECB is not a climate policy maker. We don't make industry policies, we don't make energy policies, and that's very good because we are a central bank and we are not an elected legislator or government. But when energy shocks affect inflation, and they do, when energy shocks affect the economy, and they do, if they were to start to affect wage setting and expectations, then of course that is something that becomes plainly within the remit of central banks. And that is exactly what we have experienced in the last 5 years. We have had two, and it was mentioned before, we have two major energy crises. And as long as we remain dependent on the import of fossil fuel, we will import volatility. I think that's one of the one-liners I will just give you today. By importing fossil fuels, you import volatility. And it was said, we roughly import 60% of our energy. And that has been, that figure has remained relatively unchanged over the last 2 decades. So as long as we remain exposed to volatile global oil and gas markets, energy price shocks will just continue to feed through to inflation, to economic activity. And as said, we have seen this repeatedly. So the latest data, to just give you some data, here's the central banker speaking. Headline inflation at 3.2% in May 26, but energy inflation at 10.9%. Eurosystem projections in June see headline inflation peaking at 3.4 in the third and fourth quarters of 26 and remaining above 3% until the early next year, driven by a surge, and that's the point I want to make, a surge in energy inflation as a result of the conflict in the Middle East. So against this background, the Governing Council took decisions, as you I'm sure know, in June 11, raising the 3 key interest rates by 25 basis points and committing to setting a monetary policy to ensure that inflation stabilizes at our 2% target at the medium term. Now, inflation is expected to average 3% in 26, 2.3% in 27, and return to our target at 2.0% in 28. But we should also recall that the previous shock, following Russia's invasion in Ukraine, pushed euro area inflation up to 10.6% in October 22. So transitioning away, and that is the thought I want to stress here, from imported fossil fuels towards domestically produced renewable energy matters. And the way I always say this now is to say, you can just harvest the energy from the sun. It takes 7.5 minutes now for these photons to reach the Earth. And the key issue is they don't have to go through the Strait of Hormuz. You can just get them right here. So two reasons why this matters so much from central banking. A more domestically generated energy system is less exposed, obviously, to geopolitical disruptions and to global commodities price swings. That's the volatility I was referring to. And in turn, lower energy price volatility should then translate into lower inflation volatility, making price stability easier to maintain. And of course, that is a key advantage for us as a central bank. Now, there's already evidence here, and it really makes me happy to be able to mention this example that I've used around the world, but here in Spain. The Banco de España estimates that Spain's wholesale electricity prices in early 24 were more than 40% lower than they would have been had it not been for the solar generation that has been added since 2019. 40%. And there are countries nearby where that effect was not, and they received the same amount of sun. So it just shows what is possible and what is needed. So this is a little bit, and I'm going very fast, but this is going into the central banking side. But of course, we also have a supervisory side to what we do. And again, dear, let me start with what we do not do. And this will come as some kind of comfort to you, I'm sure. So we do not decide as an ECB what banks should finance or not. We do not sit in the chair of a bank board deciding where credit should go and where it should not go. Our mandate is to make sure that banks are sound and resilient and safe, and that they can play their vital role in the economy in good and in bad times. So this means, in the climate and nature sphere, that we require banks to identify, to manage, and to disclose their climate and nature-related risks that could affect and do affect their balance sheets over time. Now, and I want to give a compliment here, in recent years, banks have improved their practices for managing these climate and nature risks. As of today, the banks under our supervision have all a foundational, what we call a foundational climate and nature risk architecture in place. We're not there yet. I can talk about that, but by and large, the banks under our supervision, which is now, I think, the 113 largest banks in Europe, they have moved from practically, not taking climate and nature-related risk into account, say 5-6 years ago, to now all doing that at least on a foundational basis. Now, ultimately, and this is maybe where I would like to stop here. I'm sure you're going to ask more questions, so I don't want to say everything that I've on my mind here today already. But this connection between Europe's net zero transition, which is so very important, and the ECB is actually, if you think about it, not actually about climate policy. It is about macroeconomic and financial stability. So I talk about climate and nature-related risks all the time, but you can translate this in hardcore language in terms of inflation and financial stability. So a Europe that is less dependent on imported fossil fuels, let me just say that one more time, less exposed, therefore, to energy shocks, and supported by a resilient financial system, which will be more resilient to these climate and nature risks because of the progress that have been made so far and will have to be made in the years to come. Such a Europe is likely to experience lower volatility, stronger investments, and a more stable inflation environment. And all those attributes, all these outcomes, they will support a resilient European economy and lay the best ground for the ECB to fulfill our mandate to maintain price stability. And let me stop here.
So to those who say that, the transition is too expensive or is too costful or, requires too much investment, would you say that it's basically the opposite, that Europe can't afford not to do this transition?
Yes, and let me, now that you trigger me, let me say then a little bit more specifically about financing needs and how I think, one can look at that. So indeed, it is clear, and it has been said before today, that the financing of the transition requires quite staggering amount of funds. By the way, we should never forget counterfactual. If we don't make the transition, the funds and the costs of the of the climate and nature risks manifesting themselves and the droughts and the disasters that we will come is a multiple of that. So kicking the can down the road is just much more costly. But having said that, it is true that we need very serious funding. So ECB staff estimates that achieving Europe's climate and nature, the climate and energy objectives requires additional annual investment, to just give you a number, of around 477 billion each year until 2030. So 477 billion additionally. At the same time, to just contrast that with another number, the EU imported 336 billion worth of energy products in 25 alone. So every euro spent, and it was made to this point earlier, but I want to make it as well. Every euro spent on imported energy is a reminder of Europe's energy security and economic vulnerability. This is such a win. I don't want to say quick win because it's years of structured work, but it is a clear win. Now, the encouraging news is that the transition does not seem to be held back, this is important, by a lack of price competitiveness of renewable energy. Things have become much cheaper in the in latest days, or the availability of finance. Technological advances, rising demand, supportive policies have improved. This is a very important thing to realize, the cost competitiveness of renewable energy worldwide. Our analysis, ECB's analysis, shows that 91% of renewable capacity commissioned in 24 was already cheaper than fossil fuel alternatives. 91%, 24. Analyses by the German Bundesbank shows that the German banking system could meet the additional financing needs arising from the transition as it has sufficient excess capital. Now, despite this positive assessment of the banking system's financing capacity, the Bundesbank surveys of enterprises and households point to a market reluctance to invest in decarbonization. So investment plans of enterprises and households are not aligned with the transition pathway that was modeled previously. So the real question for Europe is no longer whether clean energy technologies are price competitive or whether the money is there. It is whether and how our financial system and our policy framework are actually able to mobilize that capital at the, and it has been said before, at the required scale and speed. So what should we do? First and foremost, we need to get rid of all that fragmentation. You said it so well, Enrico. It's so important. We need to follow up on the true integration of Europe's financial markets. Deliver a developed capital markets union. Banks are very important, but we should not forget, and of course Europe is mainly still a bank-financed economy, but we should not forget that many of these investments need to be made in the green transition, cannot be financed by bank lending alone. Our research finds that sustainable debt securities still account for only 7% of euro area debt securities outstanding. Sustainable debt securities, only 7%. While private equity and venture capital remain relatively underdeveloped compared to other major economies. So Europe trying to finance an innovation-intensive transition with a financial system, that's what we are trying to do now, so it's not fit for purpose. A financial system that remains too bank-centered and especially too nationally fragmented. So we need to complete the savings and investment union. We have abundant savings, it has been said before, but too little of that is channeled into productive long-term investment. So a deeper and a more integrated capital market would then help to direct these savings towards clean technologies, towards infrastructure, and towards innovative firms. And it would also, by the way, there's many advantages. It ticks so many boxes. This capital markets union and the savings investment union, doing away with this fragmentation. It would also improve cross-border risk sharing and reduce the excessive reliance on bank financing. So that's the first thing that we need to do. So the main thread of what I'm trying to say here is there's enough money, but we need to make sure that it can be put to service. So the second point is that public policy should focus on de-risking rather than replacing private investment. I think this is a very important point, and I think that Enrico said it as well. You know, the scale of the investment needs that I mentioned earlier is so much higher than public money can pay for. So we need to be smart with the public money that we have available, and that needs to be put to work by de-risking private investment. So instances or examples that I can give: electricity grid infrastructure often requires public support through stable regulation. This, by the way, is also so important. Let me just stop for a second. We need to combat fragmentation, but we also need to create certainty. Regulatory certainty is so important. I know it is also true that sometimes regulation is too complex, so we also need to bring down undue complexities. But many times we forget about the extreme importance of certainty. We need to have these longer-term plans. I will say something on ETS in this regard in a second. So we need stable regulation, we need guarantees, and targeted public financing, mobilizing, and that is the key point, by doing that, mobilizing much larger amounts of private capital to expand the network needed for electrification and renewable energy integration. And then third, Europe should provide, I said it already, regulatory certainty. And please, let me just say this very, very clearly. Preserve a credible carbon price signaled through the EU ETS. The ETS is truly the cornerstone of the EU's decarbonization policy. It has already helped cut emissions in covered sectors by 50% compared with 2005. And since 2013, the ETS has generated more than 245 billion in auction revenues for EU governments and European-level initiatives, with annual revenues, remember these numbers, annual revenues rising markedly from 5 billion in 2017 to 24 billion in 2024. So this is, I think, a story that can be told and needs to be told. So a credible and predictable carbon price, strengthen investment incentives, you mentioned this, and improves the economies of low-carbon technologies.
So maybe we can ask
Sure,
Mr.
I have
Mesa
been speaking very long.
No, to
But
respond
I get
or
excited when I
comment.
talk about these things.
No, we can sense your enthusiasm, but I think that's shared amongst all our speakers about these topics. But maybe on a couple of points that you mentioned, I wanted to ask Mr. Mesa, and I'll get to Mr. Letta in a bit too, on de-risking investments, but also making investments, private investors, more attractive. How, I mean, you mentioned it earlier, but we didn't go into details. How do you make the economics make sense for investors in this case? What is it that's most needed from your point of view?
Thanks a lot. I think Mr. Elderson put it very well when he said, I mean, we need the risking mechanism and we need everyone to play a role, no? I mean, no public budgets, even if it's still, I mean, we don't have such and we need it, but no public budgets, not banks, not capital markets are going to be enough, I mean, to multiply as we need the deployment of capital. I do agree that Europe does not have a shortage of capital, that has the challenge to channel it at the level required, at the scale and the time needed. This is very important, time and scale, towards, I mean, mature, scalable and investment-ready projects, no? Banks are ready to be part of the solution, and we are doing so. I already mentioned on the sustainable business volumes that we have seen, we are disclosing it to the market. And I do agree that we need, and I have to say this also, Mr. Elderson, I mean, proportionality, predictability, and coherence on our capital requirements to be able to deploy to the level required, no? But it's true that when something is missing, I mean, when we do not have projects that are bankable, scalable, and supported by stable frameworks, that capital may be available as it is. I mean, when something is missing, we need solutions such as blended finance. Blended finance are the risking mechanism that help unlock private capital at scale, because each of the players, each of these stakeholders that Alinea is connected, plays a role. Not substituting or replacing, but supporting each other. And this is very important, the risking mechanism, so that we can unlock private capital, supported also with MDBs or private or public funds, so that we make it happen. This is not, I mean, some magic solution that we haven't still tested. It does exist. We do have projects applying blended finance on which that alignment has happened, but they are still examples. And this is the frustration, again, that some of us, we do have, no? That having the solution, having tested the solution and knowing that it's possible, somehow we do not manage to make it, I mean, a commodity and scale it at the level that is required. So we are doing good, but we need to do much better. Europe cannot keep facing growing half the US or other regions. And for that, this alignment action, no, among all stakeholders is really needed.
And, you know, Mr. Elderson, and you a bit before, you know, he spoke about regulatory uncertainty. What, Mr. Mesa, if you were, you know, if you had the regulators in front of you right now and you had to say, focus on this one thing, what's the one priority you think regulators should focus on in Europe to give you more certainty, to give the sector more certainty to pursue these projects?
Yeah, I mean, simplicity, somehow it helped. There were mentions, not to complexity or changing things. And it would be really, I mean, really helpful, no, to know. So I think Europe knows where we want to go, but the roadmap that was referred before is still not clear on the details, and details do matter. When you are making the numbers of a certain project or investment, or where you need to deploy capital, I mean, you need to know what are going to be the details around it. So simplicity and reducing complexity, and also, of course, the cost of the things that we need to assume will help a lot. Also, we cannot remain, I mean, sustainability along this year, we've seen different political momentums, but we also look at the numbers. And we also see that uncertainty is not helping, and in some occasions, sustainability is being seen more of a burden than a gain. And we need, for sustainability to be part of the solution that Europe needs, for Europe to be able to address the digital, the transition, the security challenge in a way that make it more resilient, more independent, strength. I mean, we need sustainability to be part of the competitive solution. And what we have gone through the last year has transmitted the perception to many that sustainability was more a cost than a driver of competitiveness, and it doesn't help. So we need to soften the burden on it.
Ms. Arleta, you travel Europe, you talk to all these leaders, you wrote your report, you talked about fragmentation and how that affects all different areas of the economy, but it relates to the transition as well, and it seems to be one of the biggest challenges of the transition we've seen today. Do you think leaders understand this everywhere in Europe? Do you get the sense that the scale of the problem or the scale of the challenge is understood, and that it's a driver for change, to have less fragmentation and to proceed with the transition?
I can tell you that they do. Absolutely they do. I never met one of the members of the European Council telling me it's not the right direction, it's the wrong direction, we have to stop. The key point is the inertia when we go down. When we go down, the inertia, protectionism, national barriers are exactly going in the opposite direction. So the conundrum that I mentioned before about, for instance, technological sustainability for renewables and at the same time protectionism. If we are protectionists at European level, we are stopping renewables. We have to know that this is the key point. So if we want renewables, we have to develop and we have to be more open. But at the same time, what we need, what we desperately need, and meetings like this one, for me, are fundamental. We need to try to share all the topics that you mentioned till now that are very technical topics related to finance, to translate them in something that can mobilize people out of the financial world. This is the most important mission, to link these two words. If we are not able to do so, we will lose the battle. For a very simple reason, Savings and Investments Union, I insist on this point that Frank mentioned and Lara also, Savings and Investments Union is the only way to finance in a durable way the transition. Because you know very well, we know very well that today European countries, some of them, they have national money to finance the transition. But many of them, they don't have this money. And they will use the money for other needs, not to finance the transition, because if they have to choose, they will finance reduction of taxes or other issues. So the key point is it possible to make the Savings and Investments Union with this link, of course, to common goods and sustainability as the main common goods, investments for common goods and for sustainability, so transforming this big amount of private money in investments for the transition and to accompany the transition. How is it possible? For me, this is today the most important challenge. And it is a challenge that is, I would say, engaging all of us. And it's not easy. It's absolutely not easy. Because when we talk about these finance topics, it's very simple to say, oh, I'm not an expert of finance, so I leave it to them. They discuss. And this is why I say that, for a very simple reason. You asked me about the leaders. It's the same attitude of the leaders. The leaders, they are not finance experts. The leaders are leaders. And so they say, okay, this is for my central banker, or this is for my Minister of Finance, this is for the Director of the Treasury. And when the discussion goes to the level of the experts, then it's finished. I say very clearly, it's finished. I see that, I discussed many times with Kyriakos Pierakakis on that. Because when you go to the technicalities of the finance ministers, of the General Director of Treasury, central bankers, it's so easy to have the red lines, raising at national level the red lines. It's very easy, not complicated at all. The key point is to find in the agreements among the leaders, saying that now we go together to our people and we say, hey, we have a lot of money and this money is sleeping. And we will use this money to get successful the transition and to get the transition just, social, and competitive. And this is what we don't, I would say, do. Just to make you laughing one moment in this final part of our conversation after many very, I would say, tough issues and complicated issues. I mentioned savings and investments union. Frank and Lara mentioned savings and investments union. Savings and investments union is the new word of the integration of financial services. There was an old project named Capital Markets Union, launched in 2014. It was a great idea for me. The main idea was to have London as capital of the financial united Europe on financial markets. But then, of course, Brexit killed this idea. Now we have the Savings and Investments Union. That means Savings Union is to give people better returns because they are done at a scale level for their savings, and how to bridge these savings to investments and to investments in sustainability. That is absolutely fundamental. Otherwise, it will be a failure. Savings and Investments Union, SIU. You know that one of the worst aspects of the European Union is this love for acronyms. That is horrible. So in Europe, if you are not part of the religion of the acronyms, it's impossible to survive. So it was CMU, now is SIU, Savings Investment Union, CU. There's a problem there. If you go today and if you ask AI, do it. Ask AI, what does it mean, SEU? AI will refer to Cristiano Ronaldo. Because 99% of the answers of AI will link SIU to Cristiano Ronaldo. Because CU is the way in which usually Cristiano Ronaldo celebrates his goals. The day in which we will convince European citizens that CU is not only Cristiano Ronaldo, but it's something positive for them, that will change everything. And today we are very far from that, very far. I suggested Commissioner Albuquerque, she is Portuguese, to hire Cristiano Ronaldo to be testimonial of this CU. Maybe that can help. But just to tell you that if we don't enter into this kind of discussion, when we had the euro in Europe, it was a battle and it was something that was for every European citizen. At the beginning, the euro was so complicated. In my country, big oppositions. In Germany, how many oppositions? In France, France accepted the euro with a referendum. The final result of the referendum for the euro in France was 51 to 49. So complicated. Today, 80% of the citizens in these countries are happy because we have the euro. So we have to enter in a battle on these topics, that is a battle for our future and for citizens and for our sustainable future.
So just think you wanted to respond?
Well, you know, sometimes you have the pleasure of having a panel where people violently disagree. Sometimes you have to do with a panel where people violently agree. And I agree so violently that I want to add my voice to what you said, but I'll try to be short. But, you know, we are in a university, and I see many young faces. And I think one of the key issues that one needs to do is indeed, and that's the point I want to highlight, is to become technical, because sometimes in your life you need to spend some years to really understand certain issues, and you cannot understand everything. Become technical, understand how the climate and nature crises and the energy transition affect whatever the technical subject matter that you have chosen, whether it's economics, law, finance, history, biochemistry, I don't care, whatever it is, everything is affected. Find it out, understand it. And then there comes a point that you need to remember why university is called a university. It is universal. So you need to then reach out and find language and tell stories and find narratives why all these technical expertises together will then make the difference. About storytelling, one more thing. What I tried to do in the beginning, and I've been talking about climate and nature for many, many years, I would use fear. It's not the best thing. It doesn't really work. Because what you would say is something like the following. So we all know 1.5 degrees, don't we? That's in the Paris Agreement. So are we on a 1.5 degree path? No, we are not. Are we on 2? No, we are not. Are we on 3? Yes. Worldwide. Europe, it's worse. If you knew the difference between 1.5 and 2, you do know that you don't want to. It's horrible. A 2-degree world is a horrible world. And we are in Europe on a, you know, something between 3 and 4 degree path. This does not take into account yet tipping points. It therefore also does not take into account the compounding effects between tipping points, because they are dominoes and one tipping point will lead to the other. And I'm not yet talking about the nature crisis. If you think that this story will galvanize society into immediately doing all the things that are needed for an energy transition, you will be proven wrong. So we need this, because this is true. People will die this summer in this city because of the heat. This is not something that only will happen in 2015. It's happening today. And many of them are of the age of my parents or your grandparents. So but it's not the only story we need to tell. There's another story, and you gave it to us this morning. It's about security. There's a story to be told about health. Because I was just reading, the average life expectancy of the people that live in the Netherlands, and I happen to be there quite a lot often, has increased 4 months in the last, 10 years, just because of the air pollution being less. That's 4 more months in which I can tell you these stories. But so we need to find a narrative where everyone from their different technical expertise comes together and makes the story so compelling that politicians can tell the story because they know that their voters will understand. But let me stop here.
And ideally, you want to have Ronaldo present this as well. So
he can do this much better than I.
Mr. Mesa, maybe we can close with you on maybe a slightly more optimistic note, or we can try. Looking ahead 5 years from now, like 2030, 2031, what would success look like to you in the context of this transition? What would you want to see to make you feel like there's been some meaningful progress in Europe?
Great. Of course, I would love to see that Europe is more resilient and strategically autonomous, and that transition has been part of the solution, that we see companies investing because they see a return and their value chains, value proposition and resilience and competitiveness has really increased. And also that we see citizens also perceiving that sustainability is not something just for them to believe, but it's something that is bringing to them solutions, is helping them to have affordable energy, better home or mobility solutions, that are more compatible for things to happen. For this, we have a long way to go. I think also, we need to acknowledge, everyone, that we've been on this field for a few years, that the discussion has evolved so much. And today we have numbers at the trillions, something that It wasn't the case very recent ago, so let's acknowledge on the progress because I think it matters. But it's also, of course, all the challenges we've mentioned. I mean, scalability, timing, we have an execution challenge we need to address. We have a growth and competitiveness challenge. And it's great to have a full room of believers, but there's many people still to be convinced about. And also that, I mean, we need finance and real economy to be fully connected, so we don't need to disconnect and start working with acronyms or too technical language, because we need all the stakeholders to work together, no? So, yeah, it's still exciting road ahead. Let's see what happens this summer and the coming ones. Yeah.
All right, thank you all so much. Thank you for being with us. Thank you to the audience. I think that's a wrap on this discussion too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to our panelists for their valuable intervention. Thank you to our moderator, Victoria. And now, to officially close the event, please welcome Isabela del Alcázar, Chief Purpose and Sustainability Officer at IE University.
So, thank you to all of you for being here. So, to close an event like this, the conversations we've had of this depth and quality is exciting, but also challenging, no? It's exciting because, as Frank was saying, we finally have a compelling story to tell, no? So we're not only talking about climate transition, we're talking, and these are some of the words that I've been writing down over the session, but we're talking about Europe's competitive future. Of course, this is the title of our session. We're talking about energy security. We're talking about de-risking strategies, lower volatility, stronger investments, resilient economy. We're talking about a new way of understanding maybe integrated capital markets, no? So this is terminology that connects to people, and this is very exciting and also challenging because it is not simple. We do see that that all of these challenges, the complexity relies in that it requires many different sectors, many different actors, institutions that necessarily need to collaborate. And when we're talking about collaboration, sometimes this collaboration is uncomfortable because you need to hear different perspectives. But I do think that, and we've talked about the importance of avoiding fragmentation and of continuity of whatever strategies are put in place so that the transition really happens successfully and generates competitiveness. Okay, so, well, I do think that, as we said, that here we are a crowd that is already convinced. I have to start, or to close, but start thanking, first of all of the members of the Alinea community that have been coming to the working groups, dedicating a lot of your time to ask the right questions, to come here and participate and contribute to a better understanding of what is happening. I also want to thank, of course, our speakers. Thank you very much. First, well, some of you didn't participate in the morning sessions, but we had an amazing session also with Joan, I don't have the Groizalo, I think it's the Secretary of State of Energy, and Cristina Monge, so thank you. I don't know if Cristina is still around. The depth and the insights that were provided in the panel was amazing. Also, thank you to the Minister Sarah Egesen, because first, thank you for the clarity and also for the ambition of the agenda. I think this is very important. Thank you to Frank Elderson. I do think your words were very inspiring, and you actually grounded this like European dimension of what is happening. So thanks. To Lara de Mesa, thank you very much for reminding us that the financial sector is not a satellite. It's key, and it's very important to have you holding hands of this transition. And of course, thank you very much to Enrico, our Dean, Enrico Leta. To Victoria, thank you for the conversation. And when it comes to Enrico, it's lovely to have you around because of your humbleness and how you address very important issues, and you make them attractive and funny. It's very important, the contribution. And to our teams, to Ana, Ana Sanchez, you saw her for basically pulling Alinea, pushing things to happen, and all of the Alinea team, to Borja Santos, and the members of the Brussels Competitiveness Hub. And I want to say a big thank you to some entities that maybe, or actors that are extremely important and that sometimes we don't mention, and it's all of those partners who support us. We talked about financial, so that support us for all of these activities to happen. So I want to start by thanking European Climate Foundation for supporting Alinea for the last 3 years. And I also want to thank Google, Santander, Acciona, and Bristol Myers Squibb for supporting the Brussels Competitiveness Hub. So that is all. I hope you enjoyed the session. I did a lot, and I hope to continue seeing everyone around. Thanks.